repository, which is basically a folder like your project. So when you create a project, you will have a folder with the project files. Obviously, we have the same concept in Git and GitHub, which is called a repository. Each repo usually contains at least one branch, but it can also contain multiple branches. As I've said, when you create a new feature in our app, for example, you create the home screen, let's say, you will have a branch that is called feature/home screen. Then when you create, I don't know, the about page, you will have another branch for the code that is related to the about page. We obviously have a naming convention, which is basically, as it is on the slide, GitHub-repo. So for example, if you have your app that is named, I don't know, car sharing, you will name it car-sharing. So another thing that you need to keep in mind, repo is not a GitHub thing, it's a Git concept. The same goes for commits, branches, and so on. So GitHub is just a mirror of your local Git repo. It will be a little bit clearer when I switch to the browser view, and you will see those hands-on. I've already told you what's the deal with branches. You can also use them besides creating new features. You can also use them when you fix some bugs or experiment with new ideas. The cool thing with this is if you have your project at a certain state on the main branch and you create a separate branch and you try some stuff out, let's say a new library or something like that. If you don't like what's happening, you can just delete the branch and your project will be fine because it was on the main branch, which is separate. So you can really experiment and play around with things without being afraid of losing anything from your project. The IDE that we will be using today and that is recommended for Flutter, which is IntelliJ, or you can also use Android Studio, has a GitHub integration or a Git integration in the form of version control system. That's what the button is actually called. And here on the image, you can see how commits look like. Each commit has a message. You can see update README, added card borders for books, and so on, and the author, which is on the right side, as well as the timestamp. The thing on the left part, which are the colored dashes and dots, let's say, are basically branches. The purple one was main branch, if I recall correctly, and the other ones are branches that are basically started from the main branch. You need to keep in mind that branches can start from any other branch, so it's not mandatory to start all of the branches from the main branch. Good. How are we actually going to move the code from a branch to the main branch? We can do this in two ways. We can either create a pull request, which is the recommended way, and the way it's done at any company. You create a pull request, someone will take a look over your code and will approve it, and then you will be able to merge it back into main. The other way, you can directly merge your branch into main without a pull request, if you actually have the rights to do so. In your project for this contest, you can merge them directly if you choose to use branches, because you need to move fast, and if you have to wait for code reviews, it will take some time. This is the last slide about Git and GitHub. I will switch immediately to the browser view. This is an overview. You don't have to actually understand this right now, but this is how a version control system is actually used at a big company. You have the source code, so the repo, which has some tests, unit tests, UI tests, integration tests. Then you have some build pipelines, which basically take your code, run the tests, sign the code, which is basically a package or application, and then they get deployed to the various environments, which are staging, production, and so on. So basically, at this step, the application goes out to the users, and they can play around with it. Good. Let's switch to the browser view. If we take a look on github.com, this is how GitHub looks like when you first open it. You will need to obviously create an account. So you go and click on the sign up button. You add here your email, a password, and a username. And then you will go through with this process. I will not actually show this right now because I already have an account and I think you can handle this on your own. So you go to github.com, you create an account, and then you can get to the same point at which I am. Let me switch to the page where I'm actually signed in. Good. So this is how GitHub looks like when you are actually signed in. You have your profile here, and you have your repositories, which are this tab right here. You have obviously a new a button here, which will help you create a new repository. I will show you how to create a repo directly from IntelliJ because that's the easiest way. Here you would just click on new, you would pick a repo name. As I've said earlier, the naming convention is with a dash, so I think I said car sharing. You would name it like this. You would have to choose whether you want your project to be public or private. For this contest, we have chosen or we have recommended that you use private repositories, and then you will have to invite the jury's account. So as a demo for that, I'm creating the repo. And then all I have to do is press on this create repository button. Now GitHub will create my repo. It's an empty repository, so I have no code in here yet because I haven't pushed anything. In order to add the jury's account, you really need to pay attention to this part. You go to settings, which is the button right here. You go to collaborators, which is here on the left. I will have to obviously two-factor authenticate. Okay, now we will have this manage access section. You will click on add people, and then you will search for the jury's account, which is hardcore entrepreneur jury 25. Wait, it's this one. You just click on this one. Make sure you invite this one and not the other ones, as the other ones are the accounts from the older editions. So make sure you have Hardcore Entrepreneur Jury 25. You click on it, and then you click on Add Hardcore Entrepreneur Jury 25 to this repository. Okay, any questions for this part? You can always see the recording on YouTube if you have, or if you forget this part, there's no problem. You can just rewatch it on YouTube and it will be fine. So yeah, actually click on this button. I won't do it now because that will send an invite. So you click on that button, we will receive an invite, and then we will accept it, and everything should be fine. Good. Okay, I'll show you how a repo should look like when it has code. So there's a common mistake that happens sometimes when you commit or when you first create your repo. You will have, let's say, your project's name, which is food scanner in this case. You will have a folder which is called food scanner right here and all the code in it. Your repo should look like this, not with a single folder. So it's directly in the root of your project. Let's see. So this is how it looks on my computer. You have the exact same folder structure here. You should not start your repo like this, okay? It should not contain only this folder. It should be directly in the root of your project. Good. Okay, you can see here the branches. In this case, I'm on the master branch, and you can also create other branches by either typing here new branch, let's say, and then you will be able to have this button which is named create branch, new branch from master. You can also see your commit history here. If I click on it, and you can also always get back to a certain version. Let's say I've done something wrong in those 4 commits. I can always pick this one and go back here. This is the nice thing about GitHub or Git. Even if you use it alone, you can always go back to a working version of your app. Let's say like one day before the contest, you decided to try something and it failed. You can always go back to a version that was actually working and present that. If you were to not have Git, you couldn't go back. You would have to search for an older archive of the code and so on. It would be very, very complicated. Good. I will actually show you how to create a repo from IntelliJ, how to commit things, and so on when I move to the hands-on part for Flutter. But I'll ask you again, do you have any questions? You can also address them in Romanian. There's no problem. If you want me to go over, again over some part of what we've spoken until now, I can also do that. You don't have to be afraid. Okay. If you have any questions, you can also add them or write them on WhatsApp on the support group, and I will answer them without an issue. Okay. Let's go back to the presentation. Good. So this is the Flutter section. First, let me tell you what Flutter is. So when you build a mobile application, you have quite a few options. You can use drag and drop solutions. You can use cross-platform frameworks, which are Flutter, React Native, Kotlin multi-platform, and so on. That means you write your code once, and it will run more or less correctly on multiple platforms. React Native will run on Android and on iOS. Kotlin multi-platform will run on Android, iOS, and if I'm not mistaken, also desktop platforms. Flutter will run on basically anything except probably fridges. So with Flutter, if you build your app correctly, it can run on Android, iOS, in web browsers, and on all desktop platforms, which is quite nice. And the other option is to natively, quote unquote, write the code, which is basically you write a code base for Android in Java or Kotlin, you write another code base for iOS in Swift, and then you publish your apps. This is quite tedious, especially if you are a small team or a single person, because you have to duplicate features, which will basically take you double the time. Also, a small mention, Flutter is not like a gimmick or something that's not actually used. Flutter and React Native are frameworks that are used in real-world apps. I will actually show you on the next slide for what apps Flutter is used in production. Maybe you have some of them already on your phone, maybe not. We'll see. Good. So now that what's Flutter part is clear, let's see what can you build with it. So there are a few apps that actually are built in Flutter. As you can see, the most interesting one, let's say, is the BMW app, from which you can control your car. We actually have some cool mentions as well: Google Ads, Philips Hue, some eBay stuff, some Toyota stuff, Google Classroom, and we also have ByteDance, who has some apps built in Flutter. ByteDance is actually the parent company for TikTok. Okay. On the right part, you can see that we have a Google Trends graph with a quick comparison between Flutter and React Native. What does this actually show us? It shows that there are more people that search for the Flutter keyword on Google compared to React Native. But here I have to add an asterisk. Big companies have started using React Native more than Flutter because the code for it, you have to write it in JavaScript. For Flutter, you have to use Dart, which is a different programming language, and it was easier for them to port web developers to mobile app development. You can see more of these apps in flutter.dev-showcase. You can also try the app I've added on the second slide, which I've built. It's fully built in Flutter, such that you can see what can you actually do with Flutter, see how the app feels directly on your phone. Good. What's the deal with Flutter? Between Flutter and React Native, I'll switch now to only comparing cross-platform frameworks. So I will be speaking about Flutter and React Native. What's the deal with them? So Flutter uses its own rendering engine. Basically, when you write a button, it will render it like in the same manner that characters are rendered in a game. React Native uses native components. So when you write a button, React Native will use native libraries to find that button for Android and for iOS. As a consequence of this, when you write Flutter, the UI of the application will look the same both on Android and on iOS. When you write React Native, that button that I've mentioned earlier on Android will look like an Android button. On iOS, it will look like an iOS button. You can do the same with Flutter if you make a little trick, but usually people want to have some sort of consistency for their UI. So here Flutter actually is a little bit more helpful. This comes with another advantage. Flutter usually is performing a little bit better compared to React Native because it does not use a bridge to communicate with the native components. It just renders them directly, which actually helps improve frame rate. So as you know, for mobile apps, we have a similar concept as in games. We have a frame rate, and you usually want to keep it as high as possible. Good. Impeller is the new rendering engine that is used by Flutter. It was previously Skia, the choice for rendering engine, but now Flutter is moving to Impeller because it will improve even further the performance of the apps. This is an overview diagram of how a Flutter app works. Again, you don't need to memorize this. For this contest, it won't help you that much. I just wanted you to see how things actually work a little bit under the hood. So you have the display list, which is basically, let's say you want to display a list on the screen. We then move to the impellers architecture, which is the green card, which then communicates with entities framework, which is basically drawing paths, images, and so on. Those are components of the impellers architecture. Then we move to the hardware abstraction layer, which is basically how this framework communicates with the actual drivers for the GPU, which are Metal, Vulkan, and OpenGL. Again, this is a very high overview. I don't want to go in depth with this because it will probably make no sense. Good. One more slide and we're done. How can we develop Flutter applications? First, you need to install Flutter. They have a very good documentation on Flutter widgets and their document on how to install the Flutter framework. Then you will need an IDE, which is IntelliJ. I will use IntelliJ right now because it's the thing I actually use everywhere. And you will also need Android Studio because you want to have an emulator. small mention here, if you want to develop applications for iOS, you will actually need a MacBook. If you want to develop applications for Android, you can do that from anywhere, like Windows, Linux, or macOS. So if you want to become an apps developer, you will probably eventually need to get a MacBook, but that won't matter for today's contest or for hardcore entrepreneur contest, because you can send an Android app without any issues. So you don't need to go and buy anything. I just mentioned that you need a MacBook only if you want to create iOS apps. Good. You write your code in IntelliJ, you will commit it to the version control system, which will be GitHub. And then you can publish it to the Apple App Store or Google Play for your users. Good. Before we move to the actual demo, which will probably make more sense for you, do you have any questions? You can speak directly.
Okay. What's an emulator?
Okay. When you test your app, let me read the slides. When you test your app, let's see if I can actually start one. Let's do something like this. When you want to test your app, so you're writing the code and so on, you're having fun, you need to test it somehow. Yeah, because you want to see how the UI looks. An emulator is basically the thing you will run your app on, which is basically a virtual device on your computer that simulates a phone. You can see here an Android phone that is simulated. The app is emulated in here. So it's basically taking my code and running it in this emulator. This is an Android emulator. I can also start an iOS simulator. It's called simulator because, I don't know, Apple decided to name it differently, but it's the same concept. You can see it looks exactly like an iPhone, except it's like on my computer. And if I choose it and start the app there, you will see it start right there. And then I can basically start and play around with the app and see if the code works the way I intend it to work. Give it a second, it will start. Was that clear?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, cool. Any questions? Any other questions? While this starts, it will take like 1 minute. Okay, if you have no other questions, now I will start and show you after the app starts on the iPhone simulator. I will show you what are widgets, how you can use them to build an UI. And also I will quickly build a to-do list demo with the widgets I'm showcasing you after, such that you can see how you can actually build a small app, and then you will be able to, basically develop anything as well, as long as you know what widgets to use. In the meantime, let me show you how you can get Flutter. The only thing you have to do is search on Google, download Flutter, and you can pick here what platform you have. Probably most of you have Windows. I'm on macOS, that's why it says here current device. You can also download it on Linux and Chrome OS. You select the platform that you have. Then you will select Android, obviously, and then it will tell you some software requirements. But if you scroll down, you have download, then install Flutter. You will download this zip file and follow the instructions. You have to run, I think, 2 commands. There are a lot of tutorials on YouTube. I recommend you actually do that. After you have Flutter installed, you can get started and also install IntelliJ. Let me show you how to install that as well. Download IntelliJ. So the same thing, Google is always your friend. Remember that. You have this page. It will tell you that it's a 30-day free trial, but if you scroll down, you have the IntelliJ Idea Community Edition, which is the thing you want. It's always free. You click on this download button. Let's get rid of the dark thing. You can click on this download button and then it will install. And it's the same deal with Android Studio. Download Android Studio. And you will have here something similar. Download Android Studio Ladybug. And you will run the installer and basically then you should be fine. I won't go over that because I already have those installed and it will be quite boring. Let's see if this starts. After you install IntelliJ and Android Studio, you will also need to install some Flutter and Dart plugins to make your life much easier. To do this, you have this setting wheel here in the top right. You will click on it. You will find the plugins row. So it's this one, plugins here. And then you will select Marketplace because the installed one is what you actually have already installed. So switch to Marketplace and you will search here Flutter. And there is the official plugin from Google. So take that one. You will just need to click install where I have, instead of this disable button, you will have install here. You just click install and then you're ready to go. Let's see. So as you can see, I have the app on the iPhone simulator. The iPhone simulator will only work on a MacBook because Apple, they decided to only make this work on a MacBook. So yeah, nothing you can do about that. But you can use the Android simulator on any device. So okay, I think I've finished my explanation with the simulator. Let's get started and build the or show you how widgets work. So I will close this window and I will show you how to create a new project from scratch. So you have this new button here, new project button here in IntelliJ. You will just click it. Then on the left side, you will have like multiple things. You need to find Flutter because that's the thing you will build your app in. If you don't see Flutter here, you need to do the plugins thing I've showed you earlier. This time it's here. It's the same thing, Marketplace. You search for Flutter and you will see the plugin right there. Let's go back, new project, Flutter. Then I will click on next. You also, before you do this, you have to have Flutter installed, okay? Because you see it has auto-filled the place where Flutter is installed on my computer. Let's click on next. You will need to choose a project name. I will call this Flutter Hardcore 5 Demo. I actually need to do them with underscores. And make sure your project type is selected as application. For organization, you can leave this as is. You can also type your name here if you want. I leave it as example. And here for Android language, just leave it on Kotlin, and for platforms, you can leave all of them checked. I can now click on create, and it will go ahead and create my first Flutter project. Good. This Flutter project has some demo code in it. I will actually get rid of most of it for now because I want to show you how widgets work, and then we will move to more complex stuff. But if I run it right now for you to see how it looks like, I'll move the simulator back here. Let's make it a little bit smaller. Okay, after my project builds, how can I build my project? In IntelliJ, you have this run button. If I stop it, it looks like this. So you have this play button, okay? But if you don't have it, or you don't have main selected here, you have this button on the line next to the line number, which you can click, and it will actually do the exact same thing, which is run main.dart. Main.dart is always the file which is run when an app starts. I don't know if you have any experience with other programming languages, but for example, in Java or C++, you have a main method from which the program starts. It's the exact same thing. In this case, we have a main.dart file, which contains a main method. One quick question. Do you want me to make the font larger for the IDE? Can you actually see the text okay, or do you need it to be bigger?
Can it be bigger?
Okay, let's see. It's
Thanks. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, good. So we have the main file and we have the main method from which our app starts. This will always be the same for any app you develop. So it will be named main.dart and it will contain this main method. Here at the top, you can select the emulators that you are using. I'm sorry, but I can't make this smaller or greater in size. I can't zoom in on this one, so I'm sorry for that. Here you can choose the device you want to run on, the Android emulator or the iOS simulator. You can also run it in Chrome, because I told you Flutter works on web as well. And let's run it on the iOS simulator now. And you will basically see the demo Flutter app that the Flutter team chose to basically pre-fill starter project with. So we have the Flutter demo homepage, which is basically the title, which is this one. And we have basically a button, which will, when we are clicking it, will increment a counter. Good. Now, let's get rid of this and also of this. So I kept only this main method. I will create now a page where I can basically demo some Flutter widgets. If you want to easily create new pages, you can use two text shortcuts. It's this one, which basically will create a new stateless widget, stless or stfull, which will create a stateful widget. I will explain you the difference. Let me first create it. So I typed stless, I pressed enter, and now I need to name it. Let's name it basic widgets. Good. Now, if I add this one here and save the file with Ctrl+S or Command+S, Flutter has hot reload, which means when I change my code and I save a file, it will automatically push the changes to the simulator. As you can see, I have a red thing now. Because I've changed the code, I've pressed save, and the changes have been made to the app. I don't need to run it again. I need to run it again only in cases where I've made a lot of changes and the framework can't build them correctly. Then I will need to stop it and start again. But for small changes, I only need to save, and you will have on the device the new look of the UI with the same data you already had. So if you had a list with some objects in it, you will still have that list. You don't have to enter them again or something, which is quite nice. Good. Why do I have this error now? The thing is, I mentioned here I'm running an app. My basic widget is not actually how Flutter expects me to have the screen. To do that, I need to use a widget, which is called a scaffold. I can just type scaffold here, which will have an app bar and a body. Now, if I save, let's see what's your problem. So in this case, I have an error, but I know for sure this is wrong because I don't have any my homepage or any getters. So I will stop and restart the app and it should be fine. Otherwise, we can laugh about me together. Okay. That's weird. Oh, I forgot something. It will actually be useful that I run into this. I've used a scaffold, but Flutter actually wants another wrapper for this scaffold, which is a material app. It's quite easy to remember. I actually forgot it right now. If you want an app, you need to use a material app. So here I will do material app, which will contain a home, which will be the thing I actually have here. Let's format it. Good. So now I have the basic widgets title, which is this one right here, and the hello world centered app body. If I change it to hello hardcore and I save, you will see the text has changed without me rerunning the app. Good. Now let's actually explain what happens here. Everything in Flutter is a widget. What's a widget? Basically, it's a thing that I'm using in order to build my UI. So this material app is a widget. If you used or if you wrote like web apps, it's like a div or like a h1 tag and so on. These are like tags, if you will, and you can customize their look, their children, and so on. So I have this material app widget, which basically will tell Flutter, hey, this is an app. Then I have a scaffold, which basically will tell Flutter, hey, I have a screen in this app, because we have a separation. An app is the thing that contains multiple screens. And in this case, I have one app with one screen. This screen contains an app bar, which is basically the thing you see at the top, and the body, which is basically the thing that you see under the title, meaning everything. But in this case, it only contains a text which is centered. It's very easy to center stuff compared to web development. So at a Flutter interview, you will never be asked how to center something because you only have to use center, which is quite cool. Okay, good. You can omit this const, but the IDE will tell you, hey, you can make this a constant. What's a constant widget? A constant widget is basically a thing that never changes. So whatever the user does, this can't change. So I can make it a const. This is why I have the const keyword here, because this center with the text child never ever changes. So by using const, I tell the framework, hey, you don't need to re-render this ever, which is helpful both for you and for the framework because your app will perform better. My advice, don't add it because your IDE will actually tell you, hey, you can add a const here. Good. Okay, so far so good. Let's say I want to customize this app bar and add a back button. I have here the actions, like parameter, let's say, which can receive some widgets. Again, everything in Flutter is a widget. If I use this icon button and let's save it, now you can see that I have a button which is with a setting wheel because I have used this icon. Again, those are not packages, those are built into Flutter. Both the icons which are here, you can use multiple icons. Let's see, I have add and there are a lot of icons, so I won't actually read them. Let's do this one, let's save, and you see you have this new one. The same goes for the search, is the same thing. Now, the overwhelming thing is, yes, Sebastian?
Sorry, by mistake.
Okay, good. The overwhelming thing is, how do I know what widgets Flutter has, and how do I know how to use them? If you want to know what widgets Flutter has, you just have to type in Google again, Flutter widgets, and you will have a very nice widget catalog built by the Flutter team. So this is the Flutter documentation, which is epic. And you can either search up here, or you can take a look here. So let's say I want, I don't know, some text widget. I will use this one, and it will tell me that I have three options: default text style, rich text, and the regular text. If I pick the regular one, let's click on it, I will have a page in which I actually have some code snippets, and also I will have an image with how this one actually looks, which is again very, very nice. I also, at the bottom of each widget page, I have a quick app demo snippet, which I can run, and I will have the app here. In this case, it does not work because I'm in Safari, but if I open it in Chrome, you will have the demo app here on the right, and you can make some changes here, and you will see the changes, which is nice. Now let's go back. Let's say I want something a little bit more complex. I have two design systems. I have Cupertino and Material Components. You can use either one. Cupertino is the design system for iOS apps, but you can use Material on iOS and Cupertino on Android. My advice is you go with Material Components. They are the most complete ones, and they are quite nice to use. And you have here an even bigger catalog of widgets. You have badges, linear progress indicators, snack bars. You can see it's a lot of stuff. Let's go on chips. I click on chips, and I have again the code snippet on how to use a chip. And this time I don't have at the bottom the app demo because it's a widget from Material. The same goes for Cupertino. So you can take a look here. You can also search on Google like Flutter chips, and you will find this page. If you don't know if a widget exists in the Flutter library, the simplest thing is you can ask ChatGPT, hey, does Flutter have a built-in thing for blah, 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 and then it will tell you what thing to use from here. Good. Let's go back to the IDE. Okay, so now that I've done this, let's see. I have this hello hardcore thing. Let's say that I want this one to have a border. All I have to do is wrap this with a container. I have a special command in the IDE, which is wrap with widget. It's optional enter on macOS. I think it's Alt and enter on Windows. Let's use the wrap with widget. Now I can type the thing I want to wrap this text with. And I said that I want to add some padding and some margin and also some border colors. So I will use a container. Okay. Now, I have an error. The constructor being called isn't a const constructor. This means that I need to remove this const keyword from here, and that's exactly what I will do. And the IDE is telling me that I can add it lower, so I can add it here actually. Good. Please be very careful. Sometimes when you have a const like here, and you want to do something with a variable here, the IDE won't suggest you the variables because you have this const here. So you need to keep that in mind, that some things won't be automatically suggested by the IDE because you have a const somewhere in the widget tree. The widget tree is basically like this part. It's a widget tree because I have nested widgets. Good. Let's add a border. How can I add a border? Well, if I don't know how can I add a border, but I know that I need to add it in a container, I can again use control space to find what like options does this widget take, which are the ones from here, and I can probably guess that I need a decoration. So inside of the decoration, I will pass a customization for this widget. I can hover over it to see what thing does this want, and I can see that it wants something of type decoration. And in this case, this being a container, I will need a box decoration. And now I can specify the color. Let's say border, and it will be colors red. I think it wants actually, let's see. I need to specify a border all. It's of type border. You can see here it's a box border with the color blue. If I save it now, it will add a blue border around this one. Let's also add some padding. So padding, for a padding, I know those by heart because I've used them a lot, but if you don't, it will be like a little bit harder when you get started. But I promise you, after you develop like 1 or 2 apps in Flutter, as in any framework, because you can apply this to anything, it will be a lot easier and quicker to do so. I am giving it an edge inset, which is basically telling it on all edges add a padding of 10 units. And if I save now, you can see that the border like got further away from the text. I also have other options from this one, which are symmetric. And I also have some other ones like only and all, and from left to left, top, right, bottom. Let's do symmetric. Now with symmetric, you see that I have an error here because I need to specify, if I hover over it, I can see I need to specify a vertical and a horizontal padding. Let's say I do vertical here. Now the box, let's make this actually more visible. Now the box or the border is further away, but only vertically. If I do here horizontal, it will do the same, but horizontally. I can also specify them both at the same time, then they can have different values and so on. Good. While we are here, I will also want to tell you how to format Flutter code. You can see this is on the same line, but this one is not on the same line. You see it's like a tree. This is because Flutter formats using commas. If I add a comma here and now I format the file, this will become like a little bit more vertical. So wherever Flutter sees a comma, it will format it to the next line. If I remove this one and format again, I go back to the same line as previously. So you can keep that in mind if you want. Now, if I want to make those or this blue border, let's say rounded, I can specify inside of the decoration border radius, and I will need to specify a border radius dot circular because it will be round, and let's say I don't know, okay, sure, 10, and it will become a little bit more rounded. Let's say 20, 50. Yeah, you can specify anything. Good. Any questions so far? Do you want me to go slower or more, like, I don't know, to explain things more, or is it fine? I know it like seems very confusing because it's a lot of new stuff, but I really promise you, if you actually get started and start to create an app, it will be hard at first, but it will become like better as you get used to the thing you're using. be either Flutter or something else. The same thing applies to anything. Okay, then I will move to the next things. Good. Now we've made a very simple thing. So any UI will have rows and columns, and for that, let's instead of this container, let's build a row. How can we build a row? Very easy. We just use the row widget, which will take some children. The children are basically the things that you want to be in the row. And let's create quick 3 boxes. Actually, I'll duplicate them after. With I will specify hard-coded width and height of 50 and red, and let's do green and blue. Good. Now, if I save it, I have a row which is centered on the screen due to this. If I actually remove this, it will be at the top. Good. I have my 3 boxes, obviously. And now I can tell the framework how do I want those to be displayed on the screen. I know it sounds very easy because I have some boxes, but you can do this with any widget. So it does not have to be a container. I can do this directly with icon buttons and so on. You get the point. I have here some options. Main axis size, which is how big do I want this to be. If I use main axis size min, it will take exactly like the size for those 3 squares. If I use max, it will use the entire screen. But the interesting thing here is main axis alignment, which will basically tell Flutter how to arrange those boxes on the screen. And if I do main axis alignment dot, I have some options. I have center, start, space evenly, space between, space around, end. Good. If I do start, it will look exactly the same. If I do end, it will move them to the end, obviously. If I do space evenly, it will space them evenly in the space. And if I do space between, the first one will be at the end, the middle one will be here, and the other one will be here. If I add the new one, which is yellow, it will look like this. And if I do center, they will be centered on that row. Good. If I want to use a column instead of a row, all I have to do is type here column, hit save, and now I have a column. They are centered because I have here center. If I use here start, they will be at the start. Good. I can use the same ones here, so space between, space evenly, and so on. Good. Let me try something real quick. Don't want it like that. If I want to have those but centered, I can use a row here. And obviously don't forget the comma. And now I have those which are centered on the screen, and this one is not centered. Why is that? Well, initially the column, let's see if I can, it does not want to actually do that. Let me try and wrap those with containers. I want to show you why they are centered. Let me quickly do this. And I don't want this. I want border and give me black. Cool. Good. So this one now takes the entire width. That is why now on the column I have things centered. If I remove this, they will be to the left again. Because the column, let's do the same thing here. The column now takes a different width. Let's do this and let's color it with purple. So my column is this purple thing. If I remove this, my column will have a smaller width. That is why the elements are on the left. When I add a row, the row tries to fill the entire width of the screen. So that is why when I add the row, the column gets like wider. That's why now I have these three containers centered. You need to like be a little bit careful with this, because with small adjustments, you can make the UI look very, very different. Good. Those were the basic like widgets in Flutter: row, column, container. You also have sized box and other widgets, but you can explore them on your own. Good. Okay, let's get rid of this so we don't have a lot of code that we don't need. And let's also get rid of this. And I need to close that. Good. So now we're back to square. Good. Let's say I want to have some inputs because I want to allow the user to obviously add some text. All I have to do is use a text field. I think I have a const somewhere. Oh, I missed the child, sorry. Text field, and now I can, if I save, I see that it's a text field. I can type inside, but let's make it a little bit nicer. I will add some padding here. Now it looks a little bit better, and I can tell this text field to like tell the user what I actually want to have in it. So to do that, I will use a decoration. I will use input decoration, if I can actually type, and I have a label text. Yeah, sure, enter your name, which will be above. And if I want a hint for the user, I will use hint text, which will appear like while the user has the field empty, and when I type, it disappears. If I want to have a different type of border for this one, here I will add the border and outline input border, and now it will be outlined. Obviously, the IDE tells me that I can add a const modifier here to help out the framework render things a little bit better. But I will leave it without it because it will, or I will need it removed later. Now, how can we actually read that? I have an onChanged method, which if you take a look in the console now, while I type things, I will have the thing that I've typed, because this onChanged receives a function that has value as parameter, which is actually the thing that the user has typed. So if I want, I can use it somewhere else. But if I want to use it somewhere else, in this case, let's say that I want this. Let's make a column here, and I will add that there. Nothing will change for now. Let's say I want to display it under the text the user has entered is, and I will need to add it here. Good. To do this, I will need to add this variable to another variable, which I need to declare here at the top. Let's say, so the user will, like 80% of the time, enter a string. So I will have a string and then the name, which is the thing that the user will enter. Now I get an error because I can't define a const constructor for a class with non-final fields. What does this mean? Well, I need to change this name based on what the user is typing in the box. Good. I can't do that in a stateless widget because I need to change the state. What's the state? The state is basically the information that the app needs in order to correctly display a page. So I need this name and this one changes. So this is no longer a stateless widget because it does not have at the end the same state that it has when it starts. So I will need to convert it to a stateful widget. It's very easy. I just wait, do I have, I forgot the shortcut. Let's create it by hand. STFUL, that's how I create it. And now I name it basic widgets once again, which is the same as this one. I will add my name. You can see now I have two classes. One of them is the stateful widget. You will most likely always leave this as is. And the other one is the actual state of the page, which is like the information that changes as well as the UI. I will add my variable there and I will copy this entire build method. I will place it here. I can delete this one. And now if I click on save, nothing changed for the UI, but quite a lot of things have changed, like for the behind the scenes stuff. Good. Now I have this name. Let's make it no name for the start. I can add it here like this. And let's restart the app. Good. Now I have the text the user has entered is no name, which is the thing that I've added here, which is fine. If I type here, nothing will happen because I haven't told the framework that this name should change. So what would you be inclined to do is name equals value. If I click on save and I type, nothing happens, but I've changed the name. Well, the problem is I need to actually tell Flutter, hey, something has changed. You need to re-render widgets that depend on that thing. So I take this, I add it to a setState method. This will always look the same. If I save it, you can immediately see that the text that the user has entered has now changed here and will change while I type. Why? This method, its sole purpose is for the fields that are inside of those brackets, it will go ahead in the widget tree and see, hey, this name has changed. I need to take a look in the widget tree, which is basically this part. And then it will go down the widget tree, which is it will check this container. What does it have? This column. Okay, what does this have? This text field. Has this text field changed? No, because it does not contain the name. Has this text changed? Yes, it contains this name that has been changed here. And it will re-render that text for me. Good. Any questions? Is it at least a little bit clear? Again, I know it's a lot of information.
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay, cool. Good. So now, for the widgets, we has a conclusion. We have two types of widgets. The stateless ones, which don't have state, they never change, and stateful ones, which have state and change while the user interacts with the app. Cool. Now, let's create our own widget. I will go inside of the lib folder because this is where the files are stored. When I will take a look over your code for like actually giving you a grade, I will take a look at how your code is structured. And the thing I've done here, it's okay. It's not a lot of code, let's say in a single file. But for a larger application, you won't actually want to do something like this. Let's make this a little bit more complicated. Let's say I want to have a style for this. You added an extra thing. And let's say I want the color of the text color red. Good. Let me format it and save it. Good. Now it's a little bit bigger and it's red, obviously. Good. Now, let's say I want to use this text multiple times in the app, something like this. I'm just like giving you an example. This is not very nice because I have to modify this in 4 places now. Let's say I want the text to be green. Only the first one will be green because the other ones are red, obviously. So what can I do? I can create my own widget, which will be this text. Let's go into the lib folder. I will create a new file. I will name it mytext.dart. And now I will start building my own widget. For this text, what type of widget do you think I should make my custom widget? Do you think I should make it a stateless one or a stateful one? Let's see. First, it's very nice to try and make all of your widgets stateless because they are very good for the framework in terms of rendering. A stateful widget has some extra stuff and it will like slow down your app. Don't be afraid, for simple apps, it really doesn't matter. Good, so I copied this part of code because this is the part that is basically duplicated 4 times in this file. I will create a stateless widget here and let's name it my custom button. And I will also add widget at the end. It's only a naming convention, so it will be fine if I leave it like without. I sometimes prefer to add widget at the end, but you can also leave it without. Let's import Flutter material. How did I do that? I went over this one. I pressed on Alt and Enter or Option and Enter, and I selected material. You can also use Cupertino. Those are the 2 design languages that you've seen on the Flutter documentation website. Good. Now, I have a small issue. My file is named my-test. This one is named my custom button. So I will need to rename the file to be my custom button. The files in Dart are named with underscore. This is the naming convention chosen by the framework. Good. I will copy this text. I will add it to the return. And I have a little problem. This name, I don't have access to it here. So I need to receive it. So I will add a final string name at the top. And this name, I want to like get it when I instantiate this widget. So I need to add it like this, required this.name. That's everything I have to do. If I go back in my main file, now I can use my custom button, and for the name, I can just provide this name you see here, and I can remove this. And the only thing I have to duplicate is this. If I save, let's actually also restart the app. It will look obviously the same. I have no name now because nothing's typed. As you can see, as I type stuff, things change. If I want to make this green, obviously, all of them will change. This is how you should try to structure your code. You should try to like separate it such that you don't duplicate a lot of code and so on. Now, I still have another small like conscious problem, let's say. My custom button is at the same level with main. You can't really see this if you have a small screen right now, but you will have to take my word for it. The one more thing I have to do is inside of lib, let's create a directory and name it widgets and move my custom button in there because it's a widget. Now it is very easy for anyone that takes my project to understand, like, okay, what's this? A button, and it's a custom widget, and so on. For screens, you can create a screen folder or a layout folder and so on. Good. Now that I've shown you how basic widgets work in Flutter, let me show you the like hands-on Git and GitHub like tutorial. I have here at the top in the menu a button named VCS, which is Version Control System. On Windows, you will have it like here on the left. You will open some menu and it will be the same. Good. Now for this VCS, I have a few options here. I hope you can see them, but the one at the bottom is Share Project on GitHub. If I click on it, I will let it load my account information. Probably for you, it will ask you to log into GitHub. Now I can choose a repository name. I told you I want dashes, not underscores, and I have it by default on private. If you uncheck this, it will create it publicly. What's a public repo? Basically, let's go into the browser again. If I take a look on github.com my profile name, you can actually, let's move on to incognito. So you see I have 177 repositories, but if you are not logged in as me, you can see that I have 41 repositories. Those 41 are the ones that are public. The other 136 are private. So that's the difference. For the private ones, only you and whoever you invite in the repo can see the code. For the public ones, anyone can see the code. Good. So I will let this one public. You can make it private as well. I will click on share and I will wait for this pop-up to appear. Here, it will ask me what files do I want to have in this GitHub repository. In this case, I will leave everything as selected because when I created the Flutter project, it created a special file named .gitignore here, which configured everything that I need in order for Git to work correctly. I will click on add. This basically adds those files as something that I'm tracking the changes for. And I get a pop-up, successfully shared project on GitHub. If I take a look here, I should have this new repository, which is Flutter Hardcore Entrepreneur 5 demos, which I've just created. And you can see here the file structure. If you take a look in lib, I have my main file and the code. And I also have the widgets folder with the code in it. When you create a new file, let's create a new empty widget. Let's say empty widget .dart empty widget. Let's also import. Good. Now, if I refresh this, obviously I don't have that file. I will need to commit the changes. So you can see in your ID, this one's green and the other ones are actually like with a white text. I mean the text that's actually on the like file name. Good. To commit files, I can either go to Git and then commit at the top, or I can use the shortcut, which is Control K or Command K for macOS. If I press that, now I have a commit message to enter. And you should name those like something that's actually useful. Let's say added a new empty widget. And now I will press on commit and push. Commit will only save the commit locally. Commit and push will save the commit locally and push it to the remote, which is GitHub. You always want to commit and push your changes, because if you only commit them, you are only using Git. If you commit and push, you're using Git and GitHub. So they are actually saved in the cloud. And now if I refresh this page, I can see that I have this new empty widget, which I've created earlier. And if I take a look, I can see that I have the code. If I go back and take a look at the commits, I have two commits. The first one, which is the one that actually added the project, and the other one which added the new widget. If I click on it, I can see what has changed. With green is the stuff that is newly added, the lines that are newly added. With red will be the lines that are deleted. Good. Let's say this new widget broke my app. I want to go back to the original version. All I have to do is I have a Git button here. I select the commit to which I want to go back to. Let's say the first one, because I only have two. And I will need to do reset current branch to here. And then I will need to force push to GitHub. And then I will basically have the project without this new widget that I've created. Okay, so that's the hands-on usage of Git. Now let's convert this to a to-do list, and that will be the last thing that I'm showing you. Good. So for this one, I have the name and the value, obviously, but I will also need to create something for the user to press on that will add the text from the text field. Good. In order to have access to stuff outside of the text field, I will need to create something extra, which is a text editing controller. And I will need to add it to the text field because I will no longer use this onChanged method. Let me delete it. Let's see where it ends. Here. Good. Now for this text field, I will change it to a row which will contain my text field and an elevated button, which this button will do something. And let's say add to list, or let's just leave it at add. Now I think I have an error. Let's actually rebuild the app. Give it a little time. Okay, I still have the error. Let's see why. Okay, a text field cannot have an unbound width. So I told you the row takes the entire width of the screen. For the rendering engine, that means an infinite width. The thing is, a text field can't take an infinite width because that's how the widget was built. So I will need to wrap this with an expanded. This one gives it a fixed width, which is basically take as much width of the parent widget that you can. So it will basically mean that it takes this width. Let's click on save, and we have some errors again. Let me try and rebuild it again. Good. So now we no longer have the errors in the console, and I have my text field and my button. Now let's do the same thing, which is reading what the user typed in the text field. So in this case, I am going to print the user has entered, and then to access the text that the user has added in the text field, I need to do controller, which is the thing that we've built earlier, and the thing that I've added on the text field, dot text. And now if I type something and click on add, I see in the console that I have the user has entered and then something. To actually create my to-do list, I will obviously no longer have a single name here. I will have a list of strings. So list string, to-dos in this case, and I will instantiate it to an empty array. Now this will break, obviously. I need to convert that list to a list of widgets. And what I can do is I can take those to-dos and map them to actually the My Custom Button widget, which in this case, map basically takes each element from the to-dos array and converts it to something else. In this case, it will convert it to a My Custom Button. Let's remove those. And I get an error, iterable My Custom Button can't be added to the list. This is why this creates a list, but I need it to be like each widget at a time. I need it to like give me stuff that looks like this. So I need to do something like this, which will basically take that list and convert it to like separate items. And if I save it, I no longer have that. And let's say that I have to buy some pizza. I don't see the UI because I haven't actually modified the onPressed. I can do to-dos add. And if I do here controller text, I will have the same issue as before, because even if I press on add, nothing will happen. You need to remember, I need to tell the framework that stuff has changed. So I need to use set state, and inside of that to do to-dos.add controller text, and now I can add stuff in here. Good. Any questions? Okay. If you don't have any questions, I will give you the presentation slides on WhatsApp. I can also give you the archive with this code if you want. And the thing you really need to remember in your repo, if you go to settings, collaborators, add people, search for the hardcore entrepreneur jury 25 and click on add to this repo when you create the repo for your application, such that the jury can see the code. Okay, I'll ask you again, do you have any questions? You can also like address them in Romanian. Okay, then I'll send you the presentation on WhatsApp as well as the archive with the code. Good luck, I guess.
Thank you.